Hello and welcome back all of you my dear students. So I hope you remember what I have taught you in the previous video about land use. So land is particularly used for a lot of purpose. So in the previous video I told you about residential use of land, again commercial use of land, then transportation, again mining, agriculture, and I think institutional use and public sector and all those different things. So in the previous video I just gave you a brief introduction of what we were going to study in this particular chapter. So I told you about these different types of uses of land. Now in today's video we are going to learn about three major difference of this particular settlement of human life. Like you see, if you take two or three different types of different cities, you will see that in some cities there is a lot of development of standards of living. In another cities you won't see that much a level of standard, like people are living there, like they will be using a lot of less amenities and luxuries than the people who are living in another cities. So basically you will see this difference in each and every city. Okay, no two cities will be same. Okay, both of them will be either a little bit advanced, or some of them may be a little bit backwards. Okay, backwards means not eventually backwards but traditional. Okay, so what do we call a blend of modern technology and traditional way of living. So today we are going to learn a little bit more in detail about all those things. So basically in this video what we are going to learn is that what is the difference between rural and urban areas. Okay, like we are right now studying about land. So this everything that I just told about, that modern and traditional things, like you can just tell me by this explanation that when I told you about modern standards of living and when I told you about traditional standards of living, you might have got when I told you about modern, you might have thought about a person who is wearing a coat, a black coat, white shirt, and something like having a suitcase in his hand, again using a car, using mobile phone and having watch and all those things. Like you might have thought about that person when I told about modern life standard. Okay, so this type of particular situation, or sorry, not situation, but this type of standard of living we particularly can see in urban areas very easily. And when I told you about traditional standards of living, you might have thought about a person who is in dhoti and kurta, who is wearing a turban, an old man sitting on a bullock cart, riding the bullocks in front of him, and like that thing. Or you might have thought about some little kids that are in their particular uniform of ZP schools, like you might have seen in your localities. So when I told you about traditional way of living, that is what we get to see maximum in the rural areas. And when we talk about urban areas, there we see like a little bit different modernized version of standard of living. So first of all, let me tell you about the major difference between rural and urban areas. So basically in the urban areas and in the rural areas, we define both of them categories by the use of land that the people living there are doing. Okay, so I will explain you with this example. Now let's like I will tell you the example of day-to-day life that you all know. Right now we are living in Shahada. Let's talk about Shahada a little bit later on in this video. And first let's talk about Dhadgaon, and let's talk about Pune or Mumbai, let's say. Okay, let's take Pune only. So what is the difference between Dhadgaon and Pune? Do you notice, like, just like something might have clicked in your mind that in Dhadgaon there are a lot of hills, okay, small hills, and there is a ghat and ghat section and all those things, right? And the people there are all bringing these custard apples to our Shahada. Okay, so you might have seen that when I talk about Dhadgaon, you might have like got the idea of there are a lot of trees, there are a lot of mountain ranges, then there are people who are having small huts as their home. Again, you might have thought about the education of people, like these people are not much formally educated. I'm not saying that they are literally educated or not, but I'm talking about academic education. Okay, so these people are not academically educated well. Then you might have thought about their dress, how the dress code might be. And when I told you about Pune, you might have thought about people busy on a traffic signal and going to some places in very much hurry, like right. So they always look at their clocks and they are running by the by watching the hands of the clocks. So that is the way of living in these cities. And you might have thought about kids going in English medium school in Pune. Again, kids having good dresses, and they are having new gadgets. They are playing sports like skateboard, again skating, dancing, then they are playing music and all those different things you might have thought about. So basically, what is the main difference between urban and rural area in the context of our subject and our current lesson right now is about land use. So by the definition of whatever it is given in our textbook, we will first see what is the difference between rural area and urban area. So it has divided both of these things into two categories on the basis of how they use the land. Now in rural areas, the main occupation and the land use is agriculture. Okay, so agriculture is the most important occupation of the places which are the rural areas or rural settlements of humans. And in the urban area, there is a much of diversity of land use that we get to see. Like you see, if we go to rural areas, you may see there are small homes and there is not much population there. So people don't usually need a heavy transportation system in that particular area, because this village is very small and you can cover the distance by walking only. So there is not much development of the transport facility in these types of areas. Okay, or rather it is hard, like you see, to build such kind of transportation system in this area. Now let's come back to the urban area. Now in this area, the main occupation might vary. Like there is a lot of different kinds of what we say as occupation. Like there might be service industry, there might be a manufacturing industry, there might be a lot of different things, arts, then commerce, science, technology, research, manufacturing, again industries, and all these different kind of things we get to see in urban areas. Now in order to do that thing, what these people require is a efficient, fast, and like a straight path for transportation, for moving from one place to another place. So you see, this transportation system might be very well developed. Like you see in the urban city or Pune, you can see there are railways, there are public bus and transport system. Then people there have highways and like interconnected road links, like which are very developed. Okay, then you can see one way, two way, this type of things. Okay, so these are the different type of aspect that we have to see when we talk about urban and rural areas. Now in rural areas, when I told you about the main occupation is agriculture, so we have to just look at it in a little bit more detail. Like now how diverse is the use of land in these rural areas. Now there are basically not much differences of different uses of land in these particular rural areas. So right now we will talk about a little bit of, let's say, some village that you know, like Dhadga only. So these rural areas are the areas which are near a particular forest, or let's say these areas are the area where the land is very much fertile, which can be used for agriculture. Like you see, these crops, in order to grow these crops, we need land which is fertile. Without a fertile land, we cannot grow any kind of stuff on it. So you see, most of the rural areas, why the occupation is agriculture, it is because this thing only, that they want a fertile land, and it is available near the areas where there is a good amount of water availability. Then there is a suitable condition for particular crop. Then there is availability of fertile soil, as I told you, and then there might be availability of some resources, okay, labors and some resources. Like you see, most of the labor work is done by humans and animals all together in the agricultural farms. So you see, what is happening over here is that we need a lot of various things, but most important is the fertile land for agriculture. So that is why you see most of the people that are doing their occupation as agriculture in the rural areas. So there is not much scope for any kind of service industry in this particular place, because people don't usually have much needs for they don't generally want a kind of heavy stuffings in their lives. They like to live simply, and they don't have any much kind of desires for different things. So they work on the agricultural field and they do their part. Now the land in the near the rural areas, like you see, rural areas are basically very much near to the forest area. So they have to take care about these things, that you see, there are three types of different land uses in these rural areas. So the arable land, that means the land which can be cultivating the crops, it is used in three different types. Okay, so first one type is the fallow land. Okay, so I will tell you about it in little bit more description. So first is fallow land, then second is grassland or pasture, and the third one is the particular farms. Okay, so these three types of major things that we get to see in this area. So let's talk about fallow land. Now fallow land is a particular piece of land which is not used for 1 or 2 seasons by the owner of that land in order to increase the fertility of this soil. Okay, now in the 7th chapter, in the 7th standard, if you have studied about the soils, in that lesson we have taught about all these different things, like how the soil is getting its fertility. So you might have seen in that there is weathering of the soil, then there are fertilizers used for inducing the fertility in the particular amount of in that particular soil. So that is what we have to do here also when we talk about fallow land. Now fallow land is a land which has less fertility, and now the owner has decided to not use this particular land for further cultivation of the crops for just 2 or 3 seasons, not much than that. So after this particular period of time, he can resume this all these things that we say as agricultural practices. Then the second type of land is the actual agricultural land on which the farmers are cultivating their own crops. So on this land they are actually developing these things that we call as crops that we all eat every day. Okay, so don't forget to thank a farmer if you have ate today. And the last use that we can see in this particular rural areas is grassland or pastures. Now what are these things? Now these grasslands or pastures are basically the land piece which are under the control of Gram Panchayats, and which lands are used for grazing purpose of their animals and cattle. So this particular area, like you see, animals require their own food in the form of grass. Like most of them are grazing animals which we are domesticating in the rural areas, like cows, buffaloes, bullocks, again sheep, goats, and all these different animals, horses even. Like, so you see, these animals are feeding themselves on the grass. So that is why it is very important for these rural people to have all these areas which have grass, ample amount of grass to feed all the animals. So these pastures and grasslands come under the control of these Gram Panchayats, and they are using this land for one purpose, that is grazing of animals. So I guess that much will be okay for this today's video, because you see, these rural and urban settlements are very much important for us to understand about human life. So today I told you about rural and only rural and difference between rural and urban areas, and I told you about what are the different types of land used in rural areas. First one, it is fallow land, which is not used for two or three seasons. Second, it is the actual agricultural land where we have cultivated the crops. And third one is the pasture or grassland that we are using for all the different types of purpose for grazing of this animal. So in the next video we will talk in very much detail about what are the urban areas and the different kind of uses of urban areas. So until then, have a nice week.